welcome to my channel. This is my second video. It is the 29th of April today, which means it is time for an April wrap-up, obviously, because that's what you do. Wow, has it been a month? So like I said on my last video, last year I kind of, started reading a bit more. This year I thought I'd up my reading goal. I checked, I've upped it to 55 books this year. I'm currently now on 50 books that I've read this year. And most of that has come from this month. I mean, I don't really need to tell you what's going on in the world, but you can understand what I've been doing with my time at home. Procrastinating uni work. So I've now counted up all the books that I've read this month. According to Goodreads anyway, I have read 24 books. Christ, oh my god. Up until this point, previous months, I'd been doing like 7 or 8 books a month, a few more in March, and then April comes along and here we are, 24 books later. And I have a feeling that might go up to 25 tomorrow, hopefully, because I need to finish my owls. It has been the Owls Readathon this month, and I have been taking part in that, kind of anyway, very loosely. I originally had a TBR that I'd planned. I think I put that TBR up on my Instagram TV channel thing. That has changed. Throughout the month, I kept reading other books and then going, oh, I need to read my TBR, and then not getting around to reading my TBR and just changing. Because I'm such a mood reader, and I found that I've read a lot of like ebooks or listened to a lot of audiobooks this month because I keep like thinking, oh, I'll just mess on my phone for a bit, and in that process sort of like reading an entire graphic novel. So to start this video off, I'm going to go through all the books that I've read for my owls, and then I'm going to go into like all the extra books I read this month. My original plan for owls was to go for being a professor, which I believe is 7 books altogether. 1 being Defence Against the Dark Arts, 1 being your subject of choice, which I didn't really have, and then 5 other books. Somewhere along the line, I made the decision to just read all of the prompts. So here I am going, I've got so many books left to read for owls, but actually I've completed my career, so I don't know what I'm on about really. As of today, I have completed all but 1 of those prompts, and that one I need to finish, and I will finish, and I'm going to read it tonight, and I'm going to finish it tomorrow probably, and then, that'll be an extra book. But up until that point, I have my list of books here. I just got hit in the face by my own thing. And I'll go through what I've read. Again, a lot of them on ebook or audiobook, so expect a lot of covers popping up. These books definitely are not in order of when I read them, they're just sort of in order of the prompt list. The first book is Heartstopper Volume 1. I read it for Ancient Runes. I loved that book. Obviously it's a graphic novel about 2 teenage boys sort of figuring out their sexuality or exploring sexuality. It's very British. I mean, I didn't exactly go to any kind of boarding school or anything, or an all-boys school or all-girls school. Mine was completely mixed. But I completely related to a lot of what was going on, because of the surrounding. The whole talk of GCSEs and studying for GCSEs and things. I got that. But it was a really lovely story, and I think as a first, volume 1, I enjoyed it and it made me want to read the others, and I didn't expect to read the others, but I did. I ended up rating the first volume a 4-star. The reason I don't tend to give graphic novels 5 stars is just because unless there's like a lot of writing and I am like physically shocked by something that's going on, or I wouldn't give it 5 stars, but that's the same with most books really. But I did really enjoy it. I definitely recommend it, even if you're not into graphic novels, or if you are into graphic novels, go read it. The second prompt, Arithmancy, I read Andy Warhol's Fame. It's a nice little short, easy read. I read it as part of one of the mini-a-thons we did for a blue cover, because it's this kind of blue. I don't know if you can see it properly in this thing, because it kind of looks more greenish, but it is kind of turquoisey, light pale blue. It's only 55 pages. It wasn't my original choice for that prompt, but I read it anyway along the way, so I thought I'd just throw it in there because it is completely out of my comfort zone, for books that I would like pick up off my shelves, and it's a really interesting little read. It's sort of critiquing like beauty, love, sex, fame, obviously, and it's just a really interesting commentary on all of that, and I definitely recommend it to people who are interested in that kind of thing. Next up on one of my most recent reads that I literally finished last night is Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. I started this series last year. I wanted to finish the whole series this month, but I got sidetracked with other books, and it's taken me quite a while to actually finish this. I keep getting distracted and reading other things, and you know, just not feeling incredibly motivated to read it, but I finished it. I enjoyed it. I feel like this is exactly what a second book in a series or in a trilogy should be. You know, there's things happening in the middle and the beginning and the end that all make you want to keep on reading, because in a lot of second books I tend to like, I just can't bother reading them and I want to just get to the end and find out what happens in the end. This kept me going throughout and I really liked it. I think I ended up giving it 4 stars, and I'm looking forward to reading Ruin and Rising now, which I'm going to read in May. It's like one of the first books I read because I want to read Six of Crows and I want to read the rest of the Grishaverse, especially in time for the TV series. So this was actually for the astronomy prompt. I did mostly read it at night, give or take an hour. I usually read books at night anyway, so I kind of don't realise that I'm reading during the day. If I do, I just think it's nighttime. For Care of Magical Creatures, I read Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I was going to read Ruin and Rising, but I didn't have time. I'd already read this earlier on in the month. I didn't actually read this copy of it. This is just a copy that I have. I read an ebook version of the illustrated edition. I've read it before, but I decided to read it on Kindle Unlimited just so I had that ebook version because the pictures move and it's so cool. And I've actually met the artist, and she went to the same university as me, and I met her in Prague last year, and you know, she's such a lovely person. I just felt like incredibly proud to read or look at the actual images and things, so I actually did read this. Oh my god, I got mascara running down my face. Always love this book. It's just a nice, easy read. I love the little bits of like magic history in there that's like spotted throughout the book, and the fact that the whole book is basically like it's actually from Newt himself rather than J.K. Rowling. The first owl I actually did complete was To Kill a Kingdom, Defense Against the Dark Arts. This is a standalone novel, kind of a Little Mermaid retelling. It's about a princess who is a siren, and she's of siren royalty as well. And every year they basically go and kill somebody. They use their voices and they drag them into the sea and they kill them, rip out their heart, and they give that heart as like an offering to the previous sea queen or something. Can't remember. On the other side of the story we have a prince who is actually a siren killer. She wants to rip his heart out, he wants to kill her. You know, what a start to a love story. But I really enjoyed it, and it was a nice sort of like fantasy standalone, which I definitely don't read enough of because there aren't enough standalone fantasy books. They're always in trilogies, and then I always get overwhelmed by having to read an entire trilogy or more of a series. But this was really nice, and I've had it on my shelf for ages, and I finally got around to it, and it's a really nice little pretty cover. So if you are looking for a little fantasy standalone, definitely recommend this. The next one I definitely cheated on and I've chose a random book off the books I'd read this month and put it in there as what I'd read for that course. It's a divination prompt. I threw in Radio Silence. So technically it was done by fate because I went through all the books I'd read this month and went, that one. It's kind of done by fate, but I kind of didn't do it how you're supposed to do it. Radio Silence I really, really loved. I listened to the audiobook of this, which was really nice because you obviously got some sort of characters in it, and the podcast was really well done on the audiobook and I definitely recommend it. So the story itself sort of touches on identity, a bit about diversity, and the sort of idea of like the freedom to choose, which I found really, really interesting, and a lot of which I really related to. I know it's about like kids in school. A lot of what they were talking about in terms of like going to university, how you feel at university, or how you feel when you're studying so hard and you've worked all your life for something. I kind of really related to that because most of my time in high school I did everything I possibly could do to either not necessarily get into a good university or like a high university, but I did everything I could to get high grades and I still do that, and it drives me insane. But when I actually got to the point of choosing which university to go to, even though I had offers, I then chose to have a gap year because I don't know, I burnt out. I think I nearly cried at one point, which takes a lot. Another one that I have read very, very, very recently was Misfit City, the volume 1 of the graphic novel. This was for herbology. I actually read that today. I really enjoyed it. It's kind of like a female Goonies retelling, which is saying a lot from me because I've never watched the Goonies, so I don't actually know what that's about. But the whole idea of it going on like an adventure, finding a treasure map, going on an adventure, and finding all these other people who also want to find that treasure, and you know, it's a group of girls who are all sort of banding together to find that treasure. So it was really nice. Nice and easy read. Good graphic novel. Another audiobook I listened to was Sabrina's Season of the Witch. This is supposed to be like a prequel to the TV series. This was for History of Magic, so obviously it involves Sabrina, the witch, and her family, who are all witches. And it was nice. It was, again, a nice, easy read, easy audiobook to listen to, but I didn't feel like I learned anything new about the characters. The story itself seemed to blend, I don't know if it blended really well with the actual TV series, or like the first episode. It felt like it was the first episode, but I suppose it's been a long time since I watched that, and I can't really remember what happened. But I'm sure what happened in the first episode was some of what happened in the book. I didn't fully enjoy it because of that. If you're a big Sabrina fan and you want that little bit extra, then feel free to go read it. I've listened to a few contemporary novels this month. Well, this year, but this month in particular. For Muggle Studies, I put down that I read Tweet Cute. It was a really cute book, which I guess is in the name, so at least that lives up to its name. It's about a girl who, obviously in high school, they're more on like the sort of Upper East Side kind of area. I'm not entirely sure if it is the Upper East Side or Upper West Side. Either way, whenever I read anything like that, I have serious Gossip Girl vibes, and I always love it. That girl and her sister have a blog, and they're very much into their baking. The whole family are from like this small background where they made one little food place which became a massive food chain. There's a lot about family dynamics in that side. On the other side of the story, we have their male protagonist. I keep saying that because I've forgotten their names. They have one small little restaurant, and the whole story starts off by this like tweeting rivalry between the two companies when they don't know that they are who they are, and it gets kind of vicious online, really. Something to do with a stolen grilled cheese recipe, and I don't know, it's really light-hearted, really fun, really cute, really chilled book. Sort of a theme going with a lot of the stuff that I've read this month. Everything's really chilled and really nice, and yeah, I'm trying to stay happy. She says, and then one of the actual books I read this month was A Clockwork Orange. Wow, this book is weird. I read this with Potions because my copy of it is actually 149 pages, I believe. I know, 141 pages. I actually really enjoyed it. I've never seen the movie, but I'd be interested to now that I've read it. I've watched the trailer and I didn't get what was in the trailer based on what I've read from the book. It just seemed like it was obviously filmed in a very weird and unique way. The book itself is really interesting. If you don't know, it's about a 15-year-old boy called Alex, and he's sort of living in this world where everything is about who has, you know, who's stronger and who has more power based on how much violence they can commit. And all the streets are like dirty. He has a gang. He's 15 years old and he's in a gang on the street, and he's running the gang. That's the big part of it. And as the back says, he doesn't just like violence, and they're not just doing it because of, you know, they need money and things like this. They're actually doing it because they like doing it. And it says they like ultra violence, including rape, drugs, and Beethoven's Ninth. The whole story sort of goes through his gang life at the beginning into actually getting caught, and how the government and people try to stop him from feeling like that, and then the repercussions of those sort of things. So it's a really interesting sort of, I guess, a discussion on medical testing, like in psychological testing and things like this. I imagine at the time it came out, that was sort of like a really prominent discussion. But now it's really interesting to sort of look back on that sort of thing. It's difficult to understand at the beginning because of all the weird words that are in it. The whole vocabulary is like completely new. It's all about droogs and a res. Like, we could viddy this cottage fine. That's a great sentence. Pretty cool though. The last book I've actually read for the Owls, which is also all of the books that I've read for Owls now, is King's Cage, and oh my god, I hate this book with a passion. I loved Red Queen. Glass Sword I really struggled with. I managed to get through it by picking it up little bit by little bit over months. By the time I got to the end, I kind of enjoyed the end of the book, so apparently, which I didn't actually know, I had picked up this book and I had got a couple of chapters into it. And I don't remember reading them at all. I only really remembered it when I started listening to the audiobooks. I thought if I'd listened to the audiobook, I might get through it, which I did eventually. And I recognised it. I basically started it from scratch by listening to the audiobook, and I don't know, the first maybe 100 pages weren't too bad. After that, it was just a living nightmare. I couldn't get through. I just wanted the audiobook to finish. I put it up to like the fastest speed I could, and oh my god, I don't know why I did this to myself. I just wanted it to be finished because I needed a book for Transfiguration, and there's some shape-shifting at the very start of the book. I do not want to read the next book in this series. I rated it 2 stars. The only reason I didn't give it 1 star was because I kind of liked the first 100 pages. After that, it was awful. The writing's okay. The characters are okay. The world building is okay. But it's just so much unnecessary rubbish throughout. And I'm sorry, I really like the first one. And I'm sorry if you really like this series, but I don't. And I'm surprised I didn't DNF it. I really wanted to, but I just really needed to actually get a book finished. And I only had, I don't know, 2 hours left, so I literally finished the last 2 hours of this today. And oh my god. And that is all the Owls that I have read so far. The only other one that I need to complete is Charms, which is a book with a white cover. I am currently listening to Confess by Colleen Hoover, and I'm also reading an ebook version of Dear Martin by Nick Stone. Yeah, Nick Stone, I checked. So I hope to get that finished today or tomorrow, because tomorrow is my last day for the Owls. Which, once I finish that, that would be all 12 books of Owls completed, which means 12 books in the month of April that I have read. But that is just 12 books out of the what will overall be 25 books this month. Now I'm going to go through all those other books that I've read. The first book I listened to this month was The Power of Habit, which is a really interesting read, talking about, like, you know, how we engrave things into our memory, talking about how we can better ourselves using habit, and a lot of which was stuff that I guess I already know, because you can read blog posts that are really like shorter versions of what I just read. What I really liked about it was that the writer of the book actually sort of gave examples of how this person had done it, or how this person had done it, or in the 80s this happened, in the 70s this happened, in the early noughties this happened. So it was quite an interesting read, more of like a general sort of like mini stories being told about real life. Definitely recommend it if you're interested in that sort of thing. Otherwise, maybe read a short version of it. The audiobook was good. I'd recommend that. The next book that I actually think I started in March, but I finished it at the beginning of April, maybe like the 2nd of April or something, is Thorn. I sent this book to review. Still trying to write my like official review on my blog because I just can't get words out. Because this book, I struggled getting into it. Just the story went so fast at the beginning, but by the time I got like, I don't know, that far into it, I then was sort of thankful for how fast it was going. It was a really good story. So it was a retelling of what I believe is possibly a German story of like the Goose Girl. This is about a princess who is taken to go marry a prince. And along the way she meets this witch, or the lady as they call her. And the lady forces her to basically swap bodies with this other noble woman who she really doesn't like, who is like known as a thief among the royalty and stuff, who has been forced to travel with her as her like companion. The rest of the story becomes like her challenges of now becoming this other person who isn't the princess, while this other really not nice person takes over the princess duties. but she's quite thankful for it because she doesn't necessarily want to have those duties. It's just a kind of like a really basic fantasy, very full of like tropes in that kind of way. That whole story is sort of underlined by this whole thing that's like a discussion on like abuse, sexual abuse, rape. At one moment I had to put the book down, and I think it almost like gave me nightmares, and I was like, oh my god. It's a really light-hearted read, and then they sort of throw in these other really not nice things. And for that, I was kind of completely blown away by it, and I really, really enjoyed it because of that. And I think I would like give it like 4.5 to 5 stars almost. The only reason I maybe wouldn't give it a full 5 stars was just because of the beginning bit that I didn't really like. But then I suppose the beginning bit is like a really easy version of what you're going to get yourself in for. You don't realise until later on when she starts talking about it. I know I've seen a few more people talking about it now on like Bookstagram, so if you're interested, could give it a read. The next book I listened to was The Unhoneymooners, which I just absolutely loved. I put my headphones in whilst like shopping around Iceland, and I had to hold in my laughs. I don't know, it was great. A lot of hate to love relationship sort of thing. I was expecting to not enjoy it because it's all about them going on this trip, but actually that is not all of the book, and a lot of it is covered after that, which I really appreciated because you don't get that often in a book. The next actual physical copy of a book that I read was called The Awakening by Julian Cheek, which I got sent to review by an independent publisher. I don't actually have my copy with me at the moment, so I guess here's another picture of it. The book itself was really interesting. Took me quite a while to get into it, or to read it in general. Overall, I'd probably give it about 3 stars. The world building in it was really interesting. The story follows a kid called Sam. Sam and his family are all dealing with the death of his brother, and they're all dealing with it in different ways. That side of the story itself is really interesting because it does actually talk about the different ways people grieve. The main concept of the actual book is that every time Sam falls asleep, he finds himself in this new place that he doesn't recognise, and turns out it's this whole world, this whole supposedly fictional world, but actually throughout the story you start to realise that maybe it is real. Perhaps he's been there before, because all these people keep coming up to him and saying, you know, Sam, the saviour Sam, those sort of things, and he doesn't remember anything. So the whole story itself becomes about, you know, one side on the reality of him and his family, and then on the other side this possible reality, but this new weird fictional reality kind of place. Another graphic novel that I actually read this month, and which is why I probably have read so many books this month because I've read a lot of graphic novels, is Heavy Vinyl. I read volume 1 of this month, and again I really enjoyed it. It's about like a group of girls who all work at a music shop, and I don't know if this is a spoiler, but if it is, I'm really sorry. Turns out they're all in this secret fight club. So it's a girl fight club. Incredible. I love it. I want to be in that girl fight club, I want to work at that music store, and I want to go kick some ass like they do. Really cool, quite funny. All the characters have like really big personalities, and you know, you want to find out more about every single one of those characters. So enjoyed it, definitely recommend. Another audiobook I read, or listened to, what would you call it? I listened to The Duff. Let me tell you, I loved it. It's a lot different to the movie, and I love the movie. It's one of those ones I've seen so many times just because whenever I want like a nice easy watch, I put that on. I'd never considered reading the book until now, apparently, and when I did, I was so thankful for it. And it is so different in so many ways, but I love them both equally. If you don't know, it's about a girl called Bianca. She is supposedly the Duff, the designated ugly fat friend, and she's told this by this popular guy called Wesley. In the movie they live next door to each other. In the book I don't think so, and he's like this rich kid in the book. But it was really fun. I kept listening to it, and every time I put it down I was like, I really want to listen to more, and I want them to be together. It was good. It was good. I also listened to The Alchemist, which is a little bit out of my comfort zone, and I kind of started listening to it in February, and then I just decided to start from scratch again because it's only like a 4-hour audiobook, so nice, quick and easy. And I actually really liked it. I'd seen some reviews of it that were a bit like, you know, this is outdated, and yeah, it might be. The way it kind of treats the woman in the story, yeah, it's outdated, but the actual story itself obviously is written at a certain time, so I kind of took it to being like The story itself is about dreams, it's about adventure, discovering the world around you and the importance of that. So he goes from Spain to Egypt, and along the way he meets people who, you know, have tried to discover the world by reading, or have tried to discover the world just by solely travelling, and how if you can do both you're going to find out some more things, and you can learn so much from doing all this. And obviously I have a big interest in like travel and stuff like that, so it really spoke to me. And in the end the whole thing kind of becomes like this, you know, the bliss of memories you've had from learning these things. And I don't know, I just really like that. It was nice. Since I got Kindle Unlimited this month, on like a free 2-month trial I think I'm on, I found this really short book that I thought, oh, I'll just quickly read this. It looks like it's a nice sort of LGBTQ plus kind of novel, and it was something. It's called You Belong With Me, and yes, it is supposed to be named after the Taylor Swift song. The story itself is about these two boys. They obviously go to the same school, and turns out one of them basically lives behind the other. So if you look out of each of their bedrooms, you can see the other's bedroom. And finding that out, they have this sort of like friendship that blooms by putting like notes up on the window with the writing on. And as their friendship blossoms, obviously those two are going to end up together. It's that kind of story. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. It's made out to be this really nice, easy, cliche little romance. Except from the fact that at one point he puts his phone camera on recording the window, and the other guy is enjoying himself in his bedroom. And he obviously records it. And he goes, oh, this makes me look like a paedophile. I hope he doesn't find out. And then he says he does find out, because apparently he had a red light on his camera, but he was using his phone, and since when did cameras on phones have red lights when you're recording? He literally discusses with himself, saying, I should probably delete this because it's child pornography. And he doesn't, and then he uses it for his own enjoyment, which just really wasn't necessary. Anyway, on to the next one. I wouldn't normally class this next one as an actual book that I read, but apparently according to Goodreads it is, so I was sent the first issue of a graphic novel to read from an independent publisher. I read it, I really enjoyed it actually, but it is only like 30 pages long, because obviously it's the first issue, whereas all the other ones are like over 100 because they are the full like first volume, which are all the issues together. It's called Dawn of the Patriot, Heart of Zeke. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's basically about like a vigilante in Africa, and the actual first issue is basically it's his origin story. Following the mysterious death of his brother, he finds himself in a pretty bad situation in Nigeria, where his streets are full of gangs. The power on the streets is run by like the dumbest people, because they are the strongest, because all they do is like fight. Because of his past, he has basically trained himself, or got people to train him in fighting, and so on. He ends up being a vigilante. The art style is really cool. I have done a full review of it on my blog if you want to go look at that. If you really want, you can get the first issue for free on the Dawn of the Patriot website. Since I read The Honeymooners earlier on, I decided to pick up another Christina Lauren book. I listened to Roomies, which is about a girl who is working in Broadway. She works more backstage, and her uncle is like the person who runs everything, is the director and everything. She kind of has this crush on this guitar player, and turns out he is an Irish illegal immigrant who stayed too long after his student visa ran out when he went to Juilliard. And it's very much similar to The Proposal, the movie, but I loved it. I definitely need to pick up more Christina Lauren books. The next two ebooks that I read were Heartstopper Volume 2 and Volume 3. I read them straight after one another, so I don't quite remember the like progress of what's in what, and I preferred the second and third. They got better. If you haven't read them, go read them. I really need to get the physical copies of them now. Then the last book that I have read this month is another graphic novel. It's called The Woods. I read volume 1. I have now started volume 2 because volume 1, wow, I really enjoyed it. It's got to be like possibly my favourite graphic novel. It's basically about a whole school being taken to possibly another planet. We don't necessarily know. We don't know how they got there, why they're there or anything. Then you've got the teachers and the students. The teachers on one hand don't have a clue what to do because, I mean, what teacher is trained in schools moving to different planets? And the kids are like, yeah, we know what we're gonna do, we've watched movies, let's go. And some of them go off and trying to save themselves and try and save the school, but also dealing with all the sort of monsters and the weird world that's around them. Now, what happens in the first volume? I definitely was shocked by certain moments that I didn't expect to happen. I definitely need to read volume 2, and I definitely would recommend it if you're interested in a good sci-fi graphic novel. So that is all the books that I have read this month. I definitely found like 1 or 2 all-time favourites, probably saying Thorn has got to be up there. Same with Radio Silence, probably The Duff, and like the Christina Lauren books as well, not to mention the graphic novels. So that's it. Let me know in the comments below how many books you read this month and if you found any favourites, if you would recommend any to me. If you've read any of these books and what your opinions are, particularly, please let me know your opinion of King's Cage because I need ranting friends. And I guess that's all, so I'll see you in my next video. Bye!